The amazing season continues. Hello and welcome to my podcast. Do me a favor, subscribe to the John Keim Report wherever you get your podcasts. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. You can find us there as part of Ampire Media, Ampire. Always much appreciated when you tune in. Don't forget, you can read my work on ESPN.com. I have a story up now that you're going to want to read because it's all about the Commanders' win over the Detroit Lions to clinch a spot in the NFC Championship Game. How about that phrase? Could you have imagined anybody saying that at the beginning of the year? But that's what happened after they beat the Lions 45-31 in Detroit, an upset win, one of the best wins in franchise history. It has to be, just because this is one of the more remarkable seasons in franchise history. Now, there's still more games to go. Still don't know who they're going to play in the championship game, and there's still a big one after that if you can get there. But my goodness, you cannot put anything past this team. As Terry McLaurin said after the game, we're not done yet. And it's just remarkable. I don't even know where to begin with this one. Here are a couple things before we get into all the scenes, the jubilation, some of the plays, etc. This is the first time they've been in the championship game since the 1991 season. A lot of you, hope some of you listening, were not around for that 1991 season. It's a long time ago. That was the longest drought in the NFC for teams appearing in the championship game. You know who has that honor now? Dallas Cowboys, who haven't been there since 1995. But this team has exercised one ghost after another this year. They got rid of they hadn't won a playoff game since the 2005 season, hadn't had a winning season since 2016. There's all sorts of things that have happened. They haven't had anything like this in forever. They haven't had a rookie quarterback. They haven't had a quarterback like this in forever. Maybe, when it's all said and done, maybe ever. A little bit of time to go there. Don't want to go too far, but it's hard to say that there's been a rookie you can't say there's been a rookie quarterback who's had a better year than Jayden Daniels. And what he's meant to this franchise, he is absolutely deserving of being in the MVP discussion now. I probably won't get it, but that dude deserves votes, a lot of votes, and a lot of consideration and a lot of mention going forward, because what he has meant here has been tremendous. But it goes beyond just Jayden Daniels. But man, make no mistake, like that, you know how special he is, and you know that you're watching the start of something that could be a lot of fun for a long time in Washington. And man, do you guys deserve that. Again, I said this last week. I hope you guys are enjoying this. I hope, I'm sure some of you guys were shedding tears last week, and I can't imagine what you're doing this week, the emotion you guys must have to watch this, to watch another game. I think you guys, when I see some plays, like, what are they doing now? Like, how crazy are you guys going right now? Because it has to be an unbelievable feeling. This was a tremendous atmosphere here tonight. This city was amped for this game. This town believed that this was the Lions' year. They had all those injuries on defense, and nobody was able to destroy that defense the way Washington did. And the thing that I kept coming back to, and I talked about this on the podcast on my 5 things, you watch that Niners game, and I'm watching this offense, and like, oh my gosh, the Lions offense looks great. Oh my gosh, they do all this. But every time I looked at the score, they were losing. Now they end up winning that game, but you knew, like, hey, you just have to give yourself a chance. And the way Washington was playing, they've been better than San Francisco, obviously, this year. Then when I was watching the Vikings game, okay, 31-9, a lot of Lions fans, a lot of people thought maybe that meant the Lions were back, the defense back. The problem that I had with that for the Lions was that there were just so many plays that Sam Darnold missed that would have really made that game a lot different. I don't know if they would have won, but it would have made it a lot different. But the whole point of it was you saw the holes in that defense. They were not solved, and this team took advantage of all of them. And it led to just a jubilation, a celebration, just a joyful occasion for the Commanders, and the small contingent of fans, because these tickets were not easy to get. So a small group of fans were here, and God bless them, because they saw something very special. But just watching Terry McLaurin go up to the podium after the game, and just the smile that he had, the absolute downright joy that he had talking to the media, because here's a guy from 2019 to 23, mostly knew frustration, mostly, didn't have the level of hope that you can have with this organization now. And that, even though there were times where, yeah, they were close. They were in the hunt in a couple of those. They made the playoffs one year there, even though with a 7-9 record, but they were in the hunt the next couple of years. But there was never that that feeling like they were had something that they could start building. The hope, there was more hope, is this one is there's just hope now. And before it was a different level of hope, like, you kind of hope something happens. Now they believe it will happen, right? So I don't think he ever saw that path to the future that you do now. And I think that has carried this team all season. But when McLaurin got done talking to us after, he just kind of walks down off the podium and just goes, woo! And just shaking his fist, and in the locker room, just seeing him, just the outright smile on his face, the absolute joy that he has. But he of course was not alone. You have Magic Johnson here, of course. Josh Harris was, of course, here just going crazy. You had Kevin Durant, Jeffrey Wright, the actor. I mean, my goodness, there was just Joe Gibbs was here. So just a lot of, people who who had a good time because of what happened. And, Adam Peters in the locker room just hugging, slapping back, slapping, give, the bro hugs, all that stuff. Like, it's just one person after another. And, all those guys deserve a lot of credit. I mean, Peters just got here. Guys like John Allen, Jeremy Reeves, Deron Payne, McLaurin, Brian Robinson, Cosme. By the way, with Cosme, all we know that he hurt his knee. Obviously, that's why he left the game. And that Dan Quinn said later that during the press conference, they were really bummed about him. So no further update yet on him. But anyways, just go there. But that guys like that deserve a lot of enjoyment from what this game meant tonight. But one thing I said, and I even said the other day, they kind of like, I've heard the phrase house money here, and some of the players have said like they feel like they do have it, but there's a difference between they know that they're in a unique position, and they're, in some cases, in some ways, they're definitely ahead of schedule, but they never felt contented. I never felt like that they were, oh, hey, they're happy to be here. I felt like they know that maybe they're ahead of schedule, and they know they can do something. Like, these guys in the locker room talk about being special, doing something special, that brotherhood, that togetherness. I had coaches talking to me after the game, like, just talk about, like one coach said he's never seen a team as close as this one. And when you get that, and I was telling him, it's like, you could see it in the spring, you could see it in the summer, you just didn't know how it would manifest itself during the season. And I remember even thinking, this is sometimes how dumb you are. Like, I remember thinking in the summer, it's too bad that this team isn't maybe ready with roster wise to be at a certain point, because man, they're so close. Like, teams this close do special things, but you didn't know if the roster would match up with that belief, that togetherness. Well, it clearly has, because this team is doing something special. And I tell you what, man, there should be zero surprise if they win next week. And I'll be honest, like, I even said this going in, and I think others felt this too. This was not a team you wanted to play because of number 5. And sure enough, like, there's no way the Lions felt good about this going into the game. It felt extremely confident going in the game. They know they're at home. They feel like they have this special season. But man, when you got that special guy on the other side, like, he drops in a dime to De'Ami Brown where he's about to get hit. I'm like, he just throws up, like, you just kind of gasp in the press box. It's like, oh my God. That's what he is. I even told David Aldridge, I'm like, kind of need that Michael Jordan shrug against the Blazers in the 90s, where it's just kind of, hey, it's one of those nights. But that's just who he is. And that was an absolute dime to De'Ami Brown, the 38-yarder. But that's what he does. And like, one of the other things, I'm going to get into a lot of things here, so bear with me. But here's another thing to consider with like, the Lions wanted to blitz him a lot, and they did. And he responded well each time. 160 yards passing against the blitz in the first half. You know what the most yards he had passing in a game against the blitz was? 160 first half tonight. 177 was the most he had in a whole game against the blitz. But time and again, like, he got rid of it. They picked it up, but even when they didn't, he knew where the pressure was coming from, and he'd get away from it. They didn't get to him. But it was his poise, it was the line play, it was his knowledge and getting out of the way from the blitz and throwing the ball away when he had to. He played a super, super smart game. And that's why this team wanted him in the draft. And it's it's just amazing what he has done. And but that's the poise he has, and it's when you have a guy like that, you can do things like this. You raise it, he elevates the level of play of those around him. That's what a franchise guy does. And now they're in the championship game. And this, like I said, this was a great atmosphere. But he was not a guy you'd ever have to worry about being rattled because it's just not who he is. He his emotions are always in check. You watch him, just it's funny because like I know he celebrated on the field and he celebrated in the locker room, but when guys are coming off the field, like these guys, like we're videotaping guys coming through, and he just kind of casually strolls in past the group of fans, like because it's who he is. He's got that ice water in his veins. But when you get in those tense situations, like you go back to the Bengals game, that's when you know that somebody asked me on ESPN radio after the game, like when did you know, I think this kid might be special? Well, you kind of knew during the summertime. Like I always felt he'd be good. Like there was never a sign that I saw like, oh, he may not be what you think because of X, Y, or Z. I never saw that, never heard anything like that. So I thought he'd be good, but when you thought he'd be special was that Bengals game. And those moments where he hits Terry McLaurin down the side when they're not getting the play in time and the sideline, he's not panicking on the field, play clock's running down, and you have the pressure bearing on him, and he drops an absolute dime to McLaurin. That whole game, that's like this kid is going to do it, and he's going to do it. He's going to be special right away. So, but that's who he is. So, but I also, you know, man, it's funny because like you talk to players like, when was the last time you were surprised by him? And Eckler's like, I play with him and he surprises me all the time. Nick Allegretti was like, he's like, I don't want to not be surprised. Like I don't want to take this for granted what he does. So like, so yeah, like they marvel at what he does even during the games because he's just different and they know it. But the good thing is for them is that he doesn't act like that. And I think that's one of the things that's really impressive. So I want to get to the roster construction of this too, because I think that's a key part here. So on the way to the game, I was listening to Bucky Brooks and Daniel Jeremiah on their podcast. It's a really good one. But one of the things they did is they went over each of the each of the championship game participants, or excuse me, each of the divisional round participants, and like, why are they here? What's their secret? Their secret to being here. And with the Lions, it was about the alignment from the GM and the coach. Well, I think that's also here too. But here they talked about the veterans, and I agree with them. Like so, and it's from this standpoint, I felt like they surrounded Jayden Daniels with really good situation. They, just with Marcus Mariota as a backup, with Kingsbury as a play caller, Pritchard and Blau as the quarterbacks coaches, and also Sam Hartman, in the quarterback room as well. Driscoll, like good people there, but also they brought in the leaders to allow Daniels to, and it wasn't just for this reason, it was also to instill leadership in groups and all that. But one of the offshoots was Daniels didn't have to come in here and be that leader right away. He was able to grow into that role, and that's what he did. He definitely became a leader. But I think the other thing is, that's why I say they're not just happy to be here. I think if this were a young team, maybe they would get caught up in that if there was just a young team, but it's not. And the young guys are old, if you know what I mean. Jayden Daniels, Mikey Samerstill, Dan Quinn said, like Jayden, he's an old soul. He said, yeah, much like Jayden, he has an older soul about him. When you have guys like that, like they're not just happy to be anywhere. They want to win. Then you pair them with guys like, so you have hungry, talented, smart, mature young players, and then you pair them with veterans like Wagner, Ertz, Eckler, guys who are good leaders, especially Wagner, Ertz are, they're Ertz, but they have that quality about them, but they can still play. As I talked to somebody before the game, it's like if you can't, the key is you have to be able to play, because if you can't play, you can't lead. So that's always the key, and they can, but it's that mixture. And one player was telling me like they were really smart about how they built this roster. So, it's a lot of guys who can do things at various points in their career, but it mixes really well. And I've told you before, I think part of the reason it mixes so well is because you have a guy like Wagner and a guy like Daniels who could be two alpha males in that room, but they are both really, really good about, playing egoless. I think egoless is a good word for this franchise. I think it applies to the players. Everybody's got an ego, but they don't let it trip them up. I think it applies to the coaches as well. I think it applies to Kingsbury. I think he's coached an egoless year where he's very collaborative. And it's like he said, like, hey, if somebody gives me a play, I'm going to use it. If it doesn't work, it's on them. Like that's, but he's willing to do it because that's how they want to be. So I think a lot of that just pays dividends in these kind of situations. You have like Zach Ertz, the trust that they have in him in those fourth down and key situations in the red zone. That's why he's invaluable. And when it's funny because like had that first fourth down, and I'll say this, like I'm glad Quinn keeps going for those because like if you're just going to settle for field goals in this game, it could get away from you. But he didn't want to do that. So any fourth down in close situation, he was going to go for it. And I think that you have to applaud him for that because it's a mindset and it's an aggressiveness and it's a belief in this offense. Like this defense was not going to stop this offense all game by any means. And they didn't. But the fourth down stuff, you have guys you can trust. You can trust Jayden Daniels to make the right decision. You can trust Zach Ertz to run the right route. You can trust Terry McLaurin to do the right things as well. And on the one fourth down where he just, Ertz just finds the middle of the zone and Daniels is ready and you go boom, boom. There it is. And then Ertz had the touchdown catch. They trust him in there as well. And it's funny because it's a route that he likes to run. It's that little, you start to widen, round out and cut back to the middle. But what I really liked to hear from Kingsbury is that he got to it in a different way. Typically, he kind of like right on the end of the line and kind of, he just on the end line and just cut in. Well, he scored a touchdown against Atlanta that way. And against Tampa Bay, Levante David is stepping right in front of him and takes that away. So that play was there. So what did they do this week? They put him in motion. There were two receivers to his, he was the inside receiver on that play. So three receivers to the left, inside receiver. He goes in motion behind the guys, and then it's a man coverage. So those two run off to the middle where he goes boom, widens, and cuts back in. But it was just, they got to the same route from a different look, and that's damn good coaching. And I just think that was really good. So I really appreciate things like that because it's just a subtle adjustment, good play design, a lot of good play designs all game. And to be honest, I'm forgetting half of them because it's almost 3 o'clock as I tape this, and you just start to forget things. And I think this night is about more than just a play-by-play regurgitation of what went right, what went wrong, because I think we all know what went right, which is the final score. But I did like that wrinkle. And, the other thing is too, you got to give it up for the defense because they gave up, let's see how many yards they gave up. It was 28 points. They gave up more than 400 yards. It was 400, oh my God, 521 yards. And it was a damn good game by them because they forced 5 turnovers. That is what matters. They preach ball is life, ball is life, ball is life. Well, for most of the season, the turnovers were hard to come by. Quinn's teams in Dallas were always really good. In fact, Quinn's teams in Dallas were very good against Jared Goff. And, you wonder, well, it's different personnel. So how's it going to play out? Well, it certainly played out very well because I felt like Goff, there were times where he had to hold the ball just a little bit because he wasn't sure what he was seeing, right? And, even on the strip sack, let me back up for a minute because I think there was a couple things that the defense did great. First drive, 3 and out. And I felt like those drives, like they attacked the line. David Montgomery was the back. It allowed them, there was just straightforward runs, but it allowed them just to attack the line. Like I felt like they were going to have a harder time with Jahmyr Gibbs because of his style of runs versus Montgomery because they were more straightforward with him. You get that eye candy, you get all that stuff, get him in space, hard with Gibbs. But that first play, so Louvu attacks the line. Next play, Dante Fowler's attack in the backfield. And it led to a 3rd and long, which led to a fourth down punt. 3 and out on the first series was tremendous. But the other big drive is Washington drives down the field. They cut it, the Lions go down and score. Washington cuts it to 7-3. And then the Lions drive again. They get down deep inside Washington territory. And you're thinking like, all right, could this game, the worst case scenario for them was falling behind by 2 scores early in the game against in front of a revved up crowd. You just cannot afford that. So what happens? They get the strip sack. And on that play, there was enough hesitation. Dorrance Armstrong gets around the guard on that play, goes to the outside, cuts back up. But he gets around him, and it was a quick pressure. and Dante Fowler had good pressure on the other side, on the left side. But I also think it was because Goff, one thing is like Goff was really good getting through his reads, getting ready to see it, whip it. And this play had to hold it just for a second, and boom, that was all the time that it took for Armstrong to get there. So that's, there's complementary football between offense, defense, special teams, but also then between coverage and rush. And I feel like the coverage gave him a split second extra time to get home. That strip sack, they recover the ball, they go down and score a touchdown, and that changed the game. They went from possibly being down at worst 10-3, or at least 10-3, at worst 14-3, to now being up 10-7 now. So that was a huge drive to me. Force the turnovers. Ball is life. That's what matters. Then Washington responds with, Detroit then does come back and get a touchdown. So you're like, okay, they take back control. But one thing this year, this team has always responded well. I'm going to go back before I get to this drive, they're 7-5. And I asked Wagner after the game, when did you know that this team could do something like this? And he pointed to those 3 games that they lost. He said that, they get to 7-5. During those 3 games, what he saw was a team, they said, that came to work every day relaxed. Not that they didn't care about losing, but they weren't going to change their approach. They weren't going to let it deter them from what their goal was, which is to get to a point like this. I think they felt like they still could be a good team, so they weren't going to be deterred. And I think like the result is a team that can bounce back, resiliency. He said the way they worked was always the same. And Dan Quinn had the same. I think that you take your cues from your coaches, Phil, and so like that's what they've done. And I think that from all the coaches, but I think, it starts at the top and it filters down, and you get that, then you can recover from that stuff. So anyways, so they go down 14-10. Well, boom, the offense comes right back. And then it's Terry McLaurin. So, on the play, this is another blitz. So they saw that, and he gets the ball out quick to the left. And you have De'Ami Brown and Olamide Zaccheaus with good blocks, and McLaurin just splits the middle. So I'm going to tell you something too on this play too. One of the things that, after the game that I talked to McLaurin about, he said one of the differences on this play for him, and I said, because I asked him, did you know, do you remember that stiff arm on Kirby Joseph? And he goes, and he just smiled. He goes, oh yeah, oh yeah. He goes, let me tell you something. Said that on that play, the reason why he felt like he didn't get caught, didn't get doubled, because he said in the past, in other games, he'll look back, he'll turn his head. And when you do that, anybody who's ever run track, anybody who's ever, you got speed and you're running, you don't turn your head back. Like if you're in baseball and you're still in base, you're not turning back. You've got to keep your eyes on the base. And here, keep your eyes down there, down the field. Well, he had a habit of turning back. So what he's made a point of lately is not turning back. And he's had some long touchdowns because of it. But tonight was particular. He said, I made a point not to look back. He could feel it. So he puts the arm out. You could see it out of the corner of your eye, and he pushed him away. But he felt like one reason he got in there is because he didn't look back and slow himself down. And that's, as he said, it's what they tell you in track. And he did that. So that was another counterpunch. And when they made that, it's like they're in for a heavyweight fight tonight. And this team certainly, came out on top. And it's like then they take the big lead. But you also, again, you go back to, I didn't say enough about Samerstill, about what he did, because he had 2 picks. Both of them were huge. The first one takes away points. The Lions are, I think, at like the 29. Bad throw into the end zone, but he just undercuts the ball. And boom, it could have given the Lions points right before halftime. At that point, it was 31-21, and it makes a difference that if you get that field goal there, and then here's why, because like in the third quarter, Washington doesn't score and the Lions get a touchdown. So it could have been 31-24, and now it could have been 31. That play was huge, and it's because it took away points. And then his other one came when they're up 10, 12 minutes left in the game. Ben Johnson calls for a reverse pass from Jameson Williams, and Samerstill he's got him covered. I'm not sure. I don't think I'd have thrown the ball, but if maybe he baits him in the throw, regardless, his pick. And then Washington drives down, and that was all she wrote. So listen, I can't talk about turnovers without talking about Quan Martin, because it was another pass where Jared Goff was not good tonight. And you see the difference. Like, it's just Jayden Daniels going through the NFC, like check, check, check. Better than this guy, better than this guy, better than this guy. And this is another one where it's like, this guy is just better than, there's not a quarterback in the NFC that I think is better than Jayden Daniels. And I think, Matthew Stafford, when he's on, that team is dangerous. But there's no quarterback in the NFC that anybody would take over this kid and it's not even up for debate anymore. Um, anyway, Quan Martin, deserved discussion here because an overthrow. It looks like a cover three at first. I even had a coach who kind of texted me like, "Was that a cover three?" Well, it looks like a cover three, but it really becomes a cover two. So he rotates at the snap, and I don't know if that threw off Goff or not. But what it did do is it put him in position to make a play on an overthrow. Martin said that as soon as that ball was thrown, he knew it was an overthrow. He knew he had a chance. And then, of course, he runs on the field. So I said, well, yeah, but you had to make some guys miss. He goes, he reverted back to his Pop Warner running back days or high school running back days. And so, like, that's what got him in the end zone. But that play was monstrous. And again, this team just has a belief and they play with it. Like, this team, they knew they were going to give up points. They knew they were going to give up yards, but it's about a fight. And when you have that, when you have something about you, you can overcome whatever because, like, hey, they did this, go get this. And like John Allen said after the game is when you give Jayden Daniels many opportunities, good things are going to happen for them. Like there's just that belief that is there. And like De'Ami Brown, another one, drops a pass in the game, but Keith, third down pass, a good breakup by the defensive back, but he has his hands on, he has the ball. But then after that, I want to make sure I get his numbers right because he's been tremendous in the postseason. It was six catches for 98 yards, a 42-yard catch and a 38-yard catch. I talked about the dime that Daniels threw to him on the deep out where he's running away. He's just kind of running toward the sideline away from two guys, but it was perfect throw. Guys around him, makes the catch, has a 42-yarder where he breaks open, is a good route, deep crosser. And, but he's become a valuable person here. We saw him on the screens. He's very strong on the screens, but as Cliff Kingsbury said last week, and I talked about this, and I talked to De'Ami about this, his route running has become better. He said he's got a more business-like approach in terms of getting better with his route running. His footwork is much better, and that he's more detailed with it, and that's made a difference there too. So good for him because he had the tough drop, but he came through when they needed him. And that's what this team's doing. The run game was much better. The running backs had their best night as a group since the Tennessee game. And, some of it, they ran a lot more RPOs, it looked like. And I thought the line did a good job, but I also felt like Jayden Daniels was a threat in there as well. And I think that hurt the Lions too. He had 16 carries, 1 yards, but it's Brian Robinson, 15 for 77. Austin Eckler, 6 for 47. And Jeremy McNichols, 4 for 8. He had a touchdown run that was just pure effort. And that was, for a couple yards, but that was just pure effort because it looks like he stopped. But this is what the guy does. It's why you survive in the NFL for 11 years. You keep fighting and he gets over the end zone barely, but he got over there. So that's just kind of symbolizes what this group does. And it's, I don't know how more to describe what makes this group, what enables this group to do what it has. I mean, it's arguably they have to finish the story. And as like Allegretti was saying, like, yeah, it's good to get the Super Bowl, but your goal is to win the Super Bowl. I mean, this team can rightly consider winning the Super Bowl because why not? Why can't they? We know, like, yeah, they have holes. We know that, but when they get their run game going, you force some turnovers, you're a different team. And I can tell you, like, whoever plays them next week is going to be, they're not going to look at them like, oh, it's the team. This is the team that beat Detroit on the road. This is the team that beat Tampa on the road. They've won 3 straight road games. This is a hardened team. 5 games in a row where they won in the last play or the last play from scrimmage, and then 2 playoff road wins. Who does that? Who does that? Nobody, except for this group. So there's just something different with them that you just can't shake them. They're the cockroaches of the NFL, folks. You can't kill them. And I think it's, and I think they're also probably, I'm sure you guys all get this. I'm getting texts from people like, this is as fun a game as they've watched in a long time. People like watching your team. When was the last time you could say that? Could you? It's been a long time, folks. So enjoy this. This is a remarkable story. It's one of the best stories in the NFL has had in a while. It's absolutely the best story this franchise has had since 1991. and you're a part of it. And it's been fun for me to sit through to have a front row seat to this, because stuff like this does not happen very often, as you well know, and as I know. So with that, folks, I don't want to start rambling. It's after 3 o'clock. I'm tired. I've got a 7 a.m. flight, and we got a hell of a long week. But folks, the fun ride continues. I appreciate you guys listening. I appreciate you listening all year. We got more to go, folks. I will be back on Monday with another episode. So I'll talk to you next time.